Welcome back. And of course, then we do have the Tax Indaba here happening in South Africa. And this year it kicks off then with some of the themes, of course, online a lot more than anything else because of COVID-19 then as well, and the battle of coronavirus. The Indaba itself is looking at issues like the healing of the economy post the pandemic, as well as trends in tax digitalisation and reporting. Measures to curb the spread of COVID-19 have, of course, seen tax revenue taking a knock with the disruption to economic activity. Keith Engel, CEO of the South African Institute of Tax Professionals, does join us now. Keith, thank you so much for the time. Unprecedented, of course, but it's had to be quite a difficult one for yourselves as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, we debated whether we were going to have an Indaba. We have an Indaba every year that goes through all the key tax events, brings the community together. This year we had to do it virtual, but we decided to keep the tradition going. So, yes, that was only part of the problem.
Yeah. So where to from here then? I mean, what the themes themselves around, healing the economy post the COVID-19 pandemic, how do you as tax professionals get involved in ensuring that that is something that happens?
Well, I think the bottom line is the Indaba that we have, and again, it's over the next 3 days, is we're bringing everybody together. So one of the things that you have at site that we do, along with other professional bodies, is we try to engage with government in a constructive way. And you deal with it different ways. You deal with it. Some are policy, law changes. Others are operational changes. So we have been dealing and engaging with SARS quite a bit on operational issues. The issues have changed a lot over the last few months. First, there's the economic issues which are being restored, but there were simple lockdown issues that we had to spend a lot of time with, and a lot of issues, how do you operate during the lockdown? So the key was to keep people compliant during this period and still filing their returns. So there was a lot of work around that. SARS has done a lot. You can see their auto assessments and other systems that they have, trying to be more and more electronic and more virtual to keep operating, which a lot of this economy managed to keep ticking along. But the real issue for the Indaba is, okay, what now? We weren't doing so good in February and March. Now we really hit bottom. Now we've got to come out. And the commissioner spoke, and the challenge for him is to get revenues back online without crippling the economy. So that is a big challenge. One is voluntary compliance. The other, though, is being tough and cleaning out the people who are really not responsive the way they should be. But the key is, how do you get money without hurting growth? Yeah.
Have you really found that consumers have been perhaps a little less compliant, finding ways out? Has that really increased a whole lot more at this time? And as you said, the difficulty is ensuring that compliance happens a whole lot more than before as well in a time like this. How do you then enforce things? How do you enforce compliance, enforce rules so that consumers don't shirk their responsibility to paying tax?
Look, I think a lot of people, to the extent that they pay tax on a monthly basis through their payroll, that's fine. The real problem is businesses. So businesses, you'll find that their problem is they're operating without cash. So all of their cash is going to salaried workers to keep the company going. And so there's been a bit of relief in the system around that, but how do you deal with it? So I think a number of companies have done better than they expected throughout this crisis, so most of them will be compliant. But when you start finding yourself in economic trouble, you simply don't have the money to pay. You say, look, I pay SARS, I pay my employees in keeping the lights going. You're going to see that coming through. And that's not about avoidance, that's simply economic incapacity that's going to come through that's there. There's also the issue of avoidance. Part of the Indaba is about sin taxes. Unfortunately, by making cigarettes illegal and alcohol legal, you really accelerated the black market. So in some cases, you've thrown people off the grid, and now they may not be so willing to come back on. So, but the strategy for SARS is, one, is to be, voluntary compliance. Two, to try to, the social contract. That's why it's so important what Cyril Ramaphosa is doing to get belief in the government. And then three, it's enforcement.
Keith, I mean, I know your role is not necessarily regulation, but certainly to improve the industry in itself and the way it actually deals with the regulations themselves. But would lower taxes at a time like this help, or would an increase in taxes help? What is it that would be best for the industry at a time like this?
Well, I think that the issue there is like, on the lower taxes, well, I guess the bottom line is going to provide a set of relief. But I'm not sure, I think you can't raise the taxes any more than they are. I think taxes are already pretty high at this point. So the question, though, really is compliance. Look, the professional advisors have an interest in keeping the system going. Because if the system doesn't going, there's no reason to employ them if you just simply don't want to pay. The question is, can we work together and keep that compliance going and making sure that your advisor is being honest in his reports along with the taxpayer? And a lot of them are, but there is a pressure there where some people go to the lowest bidder and they promise things that they can't deliver. And then what happens is the taxpayer will then submit a return and it will be challenged by SARS later. So one of the things is if SARS is strong on enforcement, people then will realize, well, better don't take your chances. But you do want a compliant community. I think most people are saying, look, we join the tax profession to be professionals. Being professional means following the rules. Sure, we want to help our taxpayers may know more than they should, but following the rules is important. That's what the profession is all about. But the overall climate of compliance comes out of a number of factors. Do people have the money? And two, do they believe in the government?
Yeah. Very finally, how difficult has COVID-19 made your job then as tax professionals, not just now, but certainly into the future?
Well, I think it's made it difficult. Look, it's made it difficult for SARS. I mean, that's the first thing. So your revenue has dropped. Two, you're seeing some people are fine. It's funny how this economy goes. There are a number of firms, tax is a bit recession-proof as an industry. So for a large number of people, they found they were okay and they carried on. But where you found a number of members in trouble, where all their clients are in trouble, and that starts to pass ourselves through. During this period, ourselves as an institute, we've had to make extra efforts communicating with our members to help our members. Now, we are already somewhat on an e-platform, so a lot of our things are already electronic, a lot of our training, a lot of our engagement. So we were able to do that fairly well, and a number of businesses were. But again, it's challenging all of us, and where it's going to really hit, it's going to hit the taxpayer themselves. And that is going to make it hard. Once the taxpayer doesn't have the money, it's going to create conflict. And clearly, also, we all need economic growth. And now, before we were hoping to get on a growth path, now we're just hoping to get on a restoration path. And I think the government has been somewhat sympathetic with that. When you see in the Indaba, I think they realize the difficulty, and they're not going to just come down hard because they're going to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs.
Yeah. All right. Well, certainly going to get interesting from here on. Keith Engel, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. The South African Tax Institute of Tax Professionals, their CEO, joining us there as well via video link as we get to unpack the Tax Indaba, which certainly is underway. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more out of that Indaba as well. It certainly is a difficult time there too. Speaking of tax, though, the Gauteng High Court has found that SARS to select a taxpayer for an audit did not adversely affect a taxpayer's rights. It added that an audit by the Revenue Service was merely the start of an investigation, and the initiation thereof was not subject to review as a decision incomplete. Now, this arose from a case between SARS and a company called Carte Blanche. SARS says it found discrepancies in the turnover numbers they had declared and therefore decided to launch an audit on their books. Now, Carte Blanche objected to this and proceeded to the courts to fight against SARS's decision to audit. SARS has welcomed the High Court's decision, saying that non-compliant taxpayers should not be allowed to frustrate the agency's legitimate work.